Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at something a little different.
Oh.
Yeah. A legal case, actually.
Okay.
KWVKT. It was decided just this past July.
Wow. Very recent.
Yeah, brand new case. Straight from the New Brunswick Court of King's Bench courtroom. It's a custody dispute over 3 young boys.
Oh.
And I know what you might be thinking.
What's that?
Legal cases, maybe not the most exciting topic.
Right.
But stick with us on this one.
All right.
Because this one's got some twists and turns.
I'm intrigued.
I knew you would be. What I think is so interesting about this case is how much it shows how complicated family dynamics can be these days, you know?
Totally. You'll see how the court tries to figure out all these accusations and different sides of the story.
Exactly.
And then ultimately try to figure out what's really best for the kids.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right?
For sure.
Okay, so let me introduce you to the main players in this whole thing. We've got KW, she's the mom.
Okay.
And then we've got KT, he's the dad.
And then they've got 3 sons. The twin boys are Daddy and DT. They were born in October 2020.
Okay.
And then there's a younger son, BW, who was born in November 2021.
Got it. So how does this all begin?
So rewind back to late 2019. KW and KT, their relationship starts out like a whirlwind romance. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, like a movie.
Yeah. They met on Snapchat.
Wow, Snapchat of all places.
These days, that's how it happened.
I know, and then, get this, within just a few months,
Yeah.
KT moved in with KW and her son HW from a previous relationship.
Wow, that is a whirlwind.
Right.
It's interesting how fast everything moved.
Yeah, that's something I noticed too.
It's not necessarily a bad sign, but,
Sure.
sometimes when things move that quickly, it can be a little unstable.
Yeah.
And, well, thinking about the case, maybe that quick start played a part in what happened later on.
That's a good point. Okay, so they're moving fast. They decide to relocate to KT's hometown, and boom, just like that, the twins, Daddy N to DT, they arrive. October 2020.
Wow, so they had a lot going on.
Can you imagine 3 kids all under 2?
Oh, all in diapers.
All in diapers. That's a full house.
Absolutely. Having twins, especially when you already have a little one.
Oh my gosh.
It adds a whole other layer of, difficulty to being a new parent.
Yeah.
The sleep deprivation alone,
I can't even imagine.
it's incredibly challenging. And honestly, it's not surprising that things can get tense,
You think. Okay, so I'm sure you can guess what happened next.
What's that?
The tension, it started to build. By early 2021, the relationship was showing some cracks.
Oh, no.
KW, she was dealing with postpartum depression and was just feeling overwhelmed taking care of 3 little ones.
Postpartum depression is tough. It
Yeah.
can really affect how a mom is feeling and, her ability to cope with everything.
Right, and it's important to remember.
Definitely.
It's not a weakness or anything.
Not at all.
It's a real medical condition.
Exactly. And it often needs professional help, treatment and support.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the postpartum. There were arguments happening, verbal abuse from KT. It was a difficult time in their home.
It's sad, but unfortunately that's not uncommon when couples are already having issues.
Yeah.
The stress of a new baby, or, in this case, twins,
Oh, for sure.
it can make everything worse.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes out in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
Like verbal abuse.
And as if things couldn't get any more complicated.
What happened?
KW finds out she's pregnant with BW.
No way.
While she and KT are separated.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a curveball.
Right. They're already going through all this stuff.
I know.
And then another baby on the way while they're living apart.
Crazy, right? I think it shows just how important it is to communicate clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And to have healthy boundaries.
Huge. Especially when a couple is trying to figure out a separation.
Yeah. So February 2021 rolls around and they officially decide to split.
Okay.
KT moves out and takes the twins with him
Oh.
to live with his grandparents.
I wonder what you think about that move.
Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think? Red flag or no?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It could actually mean that KT has good support, which can be really helpful with kids.
Right.
Grandparents can offer emotional support, practical help,
Of course.
even financial help.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they end up being the main caregivers.
Yeah.
It's not always the ideal situation,
Yeah.
but it can definitely be a practical solution.
That's true, especially under tough circumstances.
For sure.
It's easy to assume the worst.
Yeah.
But sometimes these unconventional living situations, they work out, especially for the kids.
I agree.
But this move, it set the stage for the custody battle that was about to happen.
Oh, boy.
KW, she wasn't happy about being separated from her sons, and that's where things got messy.
I can imagine. So this is where the legal battle starts.
Yeah, the separation kicked off a long and complicated process to decide what would happen with their kids.
Wow.
And shortly after the split, KW decided to move to Shadiac to be closer to her family for support,
Yeah, makes sense.
But that's when the disagreements about custody and visits, those really started to ramp up.
That's common, in separation cases.
Yeah.
Especially when there's no formal custody agreement in place.
Right.
Without clear rules, parents, they often disagree about the schedule, about making decisions, even just basic parenting stuff.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen.
This back and forth, it creates a lot of uncertainty for the kids.
Definitely.
And, well, as we'll see, it can sometimes lead to people doing things out of desperation.
Oh, this is where it gets good.
Tell me more.
KW actually accused KT of using the twins as leverage.
What do you mean?
Basically, that he was withholding them from her.
Oh, wow.
Unless she agreed to certain favors.
Whoa, that's a serious accusation.
Right. And it raises a big question about power dynamics,
Definitely. When one parent has more control over seeing the kids,
exactly,
there's a chance for coercion and manipulation.
Exactly.
It can be tough to deal with, both emotionally and legally.
Oh, totally.
Because it's hard to prove these kinds of things.
Yeah, for sure.
But it shows how important it is to have clear custody arrangements right from the start.
Yeah.
To protect both the parents and the children from potential abuse.
KT, of course, denied everything. He said any encounters were consensual.
Okay.
But no matter who's telling the truth, it just goes to show you how power can play a role in separations, especially when kids are involved.
Absolutely. It's like, even though they're separated, parents can still have a lot of power over each other.
Right.
And sometimes people might feel like they have to make really difficult choices.
Yeah.
Choices they wouldn't normally make.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to keep a relationship with their kids.
It's a tough situation to think about.
It really is. And it's important to remember.
What's that?
These aren't just temporary problems that go away once there's a custody order.
Oh, right.
The choices made during this time, the conflicts, they can have a lasting impact on the kids.
So true. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. We've got KW living in Shediac with all 4 of her kids. The twins visit some weekends, but it's not consistent.
Right.
KT is living with the twins in Bath and relying on his grandparents for help.
So, very different lives at this point.
Yeah, and their parenting styles, those are pretty different too.
Oh, how so?
KW, she was more of a naughty chair, timeout kind of mom.
Okay.
And KT admitted that he used to use spanking as discipline.
Oh.
Although he said he had moved away from that.
Okay.
And now used a timeout method more similar to KW's.
The court's definitely going to look closely at those different approaches to discipline.
Oh, yeah.
Consistency is really important for kids.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Helps them understand boundaries, expectations, and it shows that the parents are on the same page,
Working together.
Yeah, working together. So, the fact that KT was willing to adapt suggests he's flexible. Maybe even that he realizes his old methods weren't the best.
It makes you wonder how those 2 different environments might have affected the twins.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got the busy household, siblings, mom who uses timeouts. Yeah.
And then on the other, the smaller home, strong grandparent presence, and a dad who's changing how he disciplines.
Right.
What do you think the judge is thinking, hearing all of this?
I think he's probably trying to get a full picture of what each parent can do.
Okay.
And then decide which environment will be the most stable and consistent for the kids in the long run.
Makes sense.
He's looking beyond just the parenting styles themselves.
Right.
And trying to assess the overall well-being of the kids in each home.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, tell me.
You're not going to believe this, but the judge, he granted primary custody to the father.
Oh, wow. Let's unpack that. Why? I mean, with the accusations against him.
I know, right? It's a real head-scratcher.
It is.
But there's another twist to this story.
How?
Before the judge made his decision, both parents actually agreed to something called a parenting order on consent.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of wild, right?
After everything, all that back and forth.
I know, all the accusations.
It is surprising.
But it also shows how much they wanted to find a solution that would work for their kids.
Yeah.
Even with all the conflict, they were able to put their differences aside.
Yeah.
And agree on some important parts of parenting.
So what'd they actually agree to?
Well, first of all, KW got primary custody of BW.
The youngest.
Right. That makes sense. He'd been living with her since he was born.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part.
Okay.
They made a specific visitation schedule
Mm-hmm.
to make sure all 3 boys spent weekends together.
Wait, so even though they were going to live in different homes,
Yeah.
they'd still have regular time as brothers.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Shows how mature they were being,
Right.
and how much they wanted to cooperate. They realized those sibling bonds are so important for the kids emotionally.
Definitely.
And they were willing to put that first, even if it meant setting aside their own feelings.
So they're showing they're willing to co-parent.
Yeah, it's a big step.
But even with that agreement, the judge still had to decide about primary custody for the twins.
Right. The parenting order, it took care of visits and some decision-making.
Okay.
But the court still had to say where the twins would live most of the time.
Yeah, because we're talking about young kids, right?
Exactly. They need stability and routine.
Uh-huh.
The judge had to look at all the evidence and make a decision that would give them that.
Let's talk about that evidence.
Okay.
KW had brought up some serious worries about KT's ability to take care of the twins.
Right.
She showed videos, supposedly of the boys in clothes soaked with urine.
Oh, wow.
And she said the twins were exposed to some volatile situations in KT's life.
What do you mean?
Like there was an incident where his partner at the time vandalized his home.
Okay, yeah, those are serious allegations.
Right.
The judge definitely had to take those seriously.
Yeah.
But remember, the court's job is to look at the evidence and figure out if it shows neglect or abuse.
Right.
In this case, it seems like the judge felt the evidence.
Yeah.
It was concerning, but not enough to say KT shouldn't have custody.
So it's not enough to just accuse someone. You have to actually have proof.
Exactly.
To back up what you're saying.
And the judge also have to look at the context.
What?
Was the urine incident just a one-time thing?
Okay.
Or was it part of a bigger pattern of neglect?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the vandalism, was it actually a danger to the kids?
Right.
Or more just a sign that KT's personal life was unstable?
It's complicated.
It is. It's nuanced. These are the questions the judge has to think about.
And to support her claims, KW brought in two of KT's ex-partners to talk about his parenting.
Okay.
And his past drug use.
Witness statements can be helpful.
Right.
But the court has to be careful about bias,
Sure.
In this situation, I think the judge probably didn't put too much weight on what they said.
Right.
Given their history with KT.
It's hard to know what to believe.
It's like a puzzle with some pieces missing. You got to look at everything from all sides and try to figure out what's most believable.
But in the end, the judge decided KT should have primary custody of the twins.
He did.
What made him decide that?
Well, he talked about how stable the twins' current living situation was.
Okay.
They'd been with KT in Bath since they were 5 months old.
Right, right.
They had routines, the support system with their great-grandparents. They were doing well in daycare.
So even with the worries about KT's past, the judge felt like the twins were okay where they were.
Exactly. And the judge also talked about how important consistency is for kids that young.
Right, yeah.
Moving them from that familiar place, even if it meant keeping all the brothers together.
Mm-hmm.
He saw that as potentially disruptive, not good for them.
It's a tough decision. You want to keep siblings together.
I know.
But you also have to think about stability for the kids.
You got it. It's a delicate balance.
For sure.
And there's no easy answer.
Right.
But in this case, the judge decided that the stability and consistency the twins had with KT,
that was more important than them living with their brother and half-sibling.
And it's not like they won't see their mom and siblings at all.
Right. They'll still have visits.
Right. Yeah.
The judge made sure of that.
What about decisions? Did the judge give KT all the power?
No, he didn't. He went with what KW and KT had agreed to in their parenting order.
Which was?
Joint decision-making.
Okay.
So they both have a say in the big stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
Education, healthcare, activities, all that.
That's impressive, considering how much they were fighting it for.
It is. It seems like they're on their way to co-parenting, effectively.
It really does. It's a good reminder that these family court cases, they're not always black and white,
Definitely not. Lots of nuances.
Yeah.
Different perspectives, tough choices.
This whole deep dive has really shown me how complicated these custody cases are.
They are.
It's not just about who said what. There's so much more to it.
Exactly. It's about understanding those nuances, looking at the evidence closely.
And making decisions that put the kids first.
And I think it's important for everyone listening to remember, this is just one case, one story.
One family's journey.
Exactly. Every situation is different.
For sure.
And there's no magic solution when it comes to custody.
Absolutely. But I think we can learn some things from this case.
Like what?
Things that could help anyone going through something similar.
Give us some advice.
Well, the biggest thing is communication.
Okay.
Being clear, being respectful, being consistent, even when it's tough.
Yeah.
It's about putting the kids' needs first.
Right.
And finding ways to work together, even though you're not a couple anymore.
That's hard, especially when there are bad feelings.
It is, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And it's worth it. The goal is to make a stable, loving environment for the kids.
Yeah.
And that takes being committed to co-parenting, even when it's hard.
And I think getting some professional help can be a huge help, too.
Oh, definitely. Like family therapists,
Right.
mediators, even parenting coaches.
They can give support and strategies to work through all this stuff.
There's no shame in getting help.
Not at all.
In fact, it shows you're strong
Exactly.
and that you want to do what's best for your kids.
Couldn't agree more.
This case, KWV-KT,
Yeah.
it's such a fascinating look at how families deal with separation, custody, all of it.
It really is. It shows us the struggles,
Yeah.
the challenges, but also how things can change for the better.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot here.
We have.
The accusations, the agreement, the judge's decision.
Right?
But there are a few more interesting things I think we should look at.
Oh, good.
Details that might make you think twice about the judge's decision.
Interesting. Okay.
Or wonder how he weighed certain things when he made his ruling.
I'm all ears.
Okay, so spill it. What were those head-scratching details?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was the testimony from those two ex-partners of KT.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, they said some pretty negative stuff about his parenting.
Yeah, they do.
Talking about neglect, drug use,
Right.
even inappropriate discipline.
Those testimonies were pretty intense.
They were.
But if I remember correctly, the judge didn't really seem to care much about what they said
You're right.
when he made his final decision.
It seems like he might have thought they weren't being objective.
Yeah.
Considering, they had relationships with KT in the past.
Right, it makes sense.
He might felt their opinions were, influenced by their feelings.
Yeah.
Rather than being a totally unbiased view of his parenting.
If you have a bad history with someone,
Exactly.
it's hard to be completely fair, even if you're trying to be.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Remember how KT admitted to spanking as a form of discipline
Oh,
back in the day, which isn't really acceptable these days.
Right. And KW was all about the timeouts.
She was.
It seemed like their styles were totally opposite.
It did, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
KT said he'd stopped spanking
Okay.
and started using a timeout method, kind of like KW's.
Hmm.
So maybe the judge saw that as a good sign.
Like KT was growing, changing,
Yeah.
willing to
Yeah.
try new things.
Judges like to see that parents can change, that they can grow.
Yeah.
In this situation, KT changing from corporal punishment
Mm-hmm.
to a more accepted approach,
Right.
that could show the judge that he's committed to being a better parent.
It shows he's willing to learn
Yes.
and adapt, which is super important in parenting.
Totally agree. Parenting is a constant learning experience,
It is. It is.
And realizing when your methods aren't working
Right.
and then making changes,
Yeah,
that's a sign of a good parent.
definitely. And let's not forget KT's parents.
Oh, right.
They were such a big help for him and the twins.
Huge support system.
Yeah.
They're practically co-parents,
Yeah.
giving the twins stability, consistency,
Uh-huh.
and the judge definitely noticed that.
So even though there were some warning signs, some concerns,
Yeah.
the judge seemed to focus on the good stuff.
Yeah.
He saw a dad with support, changing his ways, providing a good place for his kids.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it shows us that family court judges,
Yeah.
they're really looking for the best outcome for the kids,
Right.
even when things are messy
Right.
and there are past mistakes.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
It has.
Custody cases are way more complicated than I thought.
They are.
It's not just about what people say, it's so much deeper than that.
Totally agree. It's about understanding all the little things, weighing the evidence carefully,
Yeah.
and putting the well-being of the kids above everything else.
And for everyone listening out there, this is just one case, one story.
Real and family. Yeah,
Every situation is unique.
for sure.
There's no one right answer for custody arrangements.
No.
What do you think are some takeaways from this case, though?
That's a good question.
For anyone going through separation or co-parenting?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'd say is communication.
Communication.
It's so important. Clear communication, respectful communication, consistent communication.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard.
It's got to be tough sometimes.
It is, but it's all about putting those kids' needs first.
Yeah.
And finding ways to work together.
Even when you're not together anymore.
Exactly.
That's a tall order, especially when there's hurt, anger.
It is challenging, no doubt.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
Okay.
And it's worth it. Think about the goal, creating a good, stable, loving place for your kids.
Yeah,
And that takes co-parenting, even when it's tough.
it does.
And you know what else can help a lot?
What's that?
Getting professional help.
Oh, yeah.
Family therapists.
Right.
Mediators, even parenting coaches.
Yeah.
They can offer support, give you strategies to get through all of this.
There's no shame in asking for help.
None at all. Actually, it shows strength.
I like that.
It shows that you're committed to doing what's best for your children.
It does.
It really does.
This case, KWVKT, it's such a fascinating example of how families deal with separation, custody, co-parenting, the whole thing.
It highlights all the complexities,
Yeah.
the challenges, but also how things can change.
For better?
For the better, exactly.
So for all of you listening, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, what stood out to you?
What are you still wondering about?
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one last thing to think about.
Okay.
When you look at all the challenges and changes in families today, what do you think is the most important thing when deciding custody arrangements?
Yeah.
Arrangements that truly benefit the children.
That's a good question.
It's something to think about.
It is.
Maybe even talk about with people you know.
Until next time, keep diving deep.